Siddharth, hi, good to have you with us. How have you been?
Hi, Ashu. I'm very good. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Siddharth, it's excited to have you with us on this session. This is a session which has been long in the making, and my excitement largely stems from the fact that India has been a super fast growing market, right? We've in a way bypassed that entire era of desktop laptops, right? I think the younger audience today is on the mobile, right? But at the same time, we've had events like COVID. The complexity is continued to increase. The way content has led to the change in consumer behavior. Our priorities, fads are flying fast, right? That essentially means that for businesses, it's going to be a very, very complex landscape. Advertising is something, or engaging the audience is something which becomes just so much more important, right? And because of the diversity in mediums, because of this entire app ecosystem come together, because of mediums like, say, Instagram, Snapchat, and very local domestic mediums, shared chat like mediums coming in, I think the landscape is becoming so much more competitive, right? At the same time, TVs have become smart, right? So I think we're in an extremely complex sort of a condition, right? While as consumers we continue to enjoy all this, but I think from a business standpoint, bringing in sensibility when you want to engage with the audience becomes just so much more important because there's an absolute deluge of content, right? This content which is coming from everywhere, and I think in that madness it is important to get the right tools in hand, right? And you leading one of that at MiQ. So like I said, right, this becomes an exciting conversation at many levels. But before we do that, I'd love a quick round of introduction, and we start more detailed conversation about programmatic advertising from there on.
Sure. Ashu, I completely agree with you that there are particular options for marketers to look at from a digital perspective and even from other mediums perspective as well. Right? And of course, digital has grown quite a lot. So a quick introduction about my background and what I've done till now. So I've done graduation from IIM Calcutta in 2002, and then from there I was in the tech industry. So I worked with IBM and Microsoft for almost 8-9 years, and then I made the switch. So I joined Google and I got into the ad business during that time, and that was in 2010. It was an interesting switch from tech to advertising, but tech-led advertising. And so I was at Google for almost 7 years till 2017. And I was leading multiple verticals, big verticals for Google in India. And then from there, I got the opportunity to head Criteo in India, Criteo's business. So Criteo is also an advertising technology platform. And then 2019, I joined MiQ, and very interestingly, MiQ has been in India for a long time. Since 2011, we have a world-class center of excellence in Bangalore. But they also wanted to expand in India commercially, so that's how I joined.
Wonderful.
And scaled and launched the business, and now I look after India, South Asia, and China businesses for me.
Fantastic. We're going to talk a lot about that, right? We're going to talk about the entire Asia region, right? Because there's amazing action which is happening in that region, right? While of course some are reeling under pressure, but I think Asia continues to be exciting, right? Possibly the engine of growth, right? Like some of the reports out there have been stating, right? I think our appetite is phenomenal in that sense. Before we do all of that, so now coming to programmatic advertising, right? Coming to MiQ, I'd love to start this conversation wanting to understand where are we as a country, and it's more India first, right? In that sense, because last billion people market, right? And you cannot ask for more complex environment than what we have in India, right? The layers and the regionality and the cultural aspects, right? It just is so diverse in many ways, right? Where are we, Siddharth, on the India front, right? I mean, you've seen a transition. You've seen a transition. For me, 2019, 2020 has been an event which is only quadrupled that complexity.
Yes.
Love to understand where are we as a country today, as you look at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so just to put a bit of historical context, right? So for most of the markets, especially the Western markets, internet came in 1995, right? Sure. I would say in India, internet came in around 2008, 2009. Right. Because before that, our numbers were itself not that big from an internet perspective. And I'm saying our numbers are always big, but as compared to the total population percentage, right? So in 2010, 2011, I remember we were at about 70-80 million internet users in India, and now we are close to 800 million internet users in India.
Right.
And as you rightly said, there's been a lot of changes and a lot of rapid changes, good changes basically. So I think the first thing was in 2015-16, things really started accelerating because the data prices started coming down, right? And it really happened. A big factor was because of the new telecom entrant and data prices crashing. And then after that, we had demonetization. Then we had pandemic, right? So data prices crashing, demonetization leading to more people adopting digital currency as well, and then from there, pandemic completely accelerating the entire thing, where not only digital payments accelerated, but also everything is now being delivered at your home, because that was the need of the pandemic, and the whole infrastructure got built that way, right? So now when I go to any small town in India, I can stay there for a week and I can just do all my transactions through UPI. I don't need to carry my wallet or my cash at all.
You don't need to, yes, right?
And this has been my actual experience. Then from a media perspective, again, a lot of changes which we see, right? So it's earlier digital was being used from a marketing perspective for performance, right? When you are using digital, you want something to happen, leads to come in or ROI to come in. And of course, you always had your print and TV as the big mediums. Now, what is happening is everything is converting into digital, right? So you consume news on internet, your TV is becoming smart, right? Even the billboards, what you're seeing, which used to be offline, are now getting online as well. So what you have now is plethora of channels getting connected on internet, and then from there, there's also explosion of data, obviously. And data-driven marketing on omni-channel, on various channels, that would be very, very interesting play in this decade, and not only in this decade, but in the next 5 years itself. And one highlight I would like to say is that as India had 70-80 million consumers on internet in 2010-2011, in 2021 we had about 80 million to 110 million people connected on smart TV. So we are exactly at the same stage where 10 years back internet was, and now the TV is there, and of course TV is the big daddy of the media, right? But now TV itself is getting converted to digital, and it might not take 10 years. It might take just 5-6 years for us to reach to 800 million people on smart TV in India.
I completely agree with what you're saying, Siddharth, right? I think I've had the opportunity of talking to many founders, right? Especially in the D2C category, right? And I think D2C has exploded last 2.5 years. D2C has exploded, right? Where everybody was at home consuming content, and getting influenced, right? Consciously, subconsciously, right? And then this appetite to purchase. I think we're an aspirational country in that sense, right? It was phenomenal, right? And cut to the other side of the conversation, right? When you talk to founders, while there is this exuberance that is there in the market, right? This want and hunger to consume, the bigger problem becomes that for a founder to or the teams, right, to manage their efficiency across all channels is become just so complicated. There is one medium which is working for them, the other medium is not working for them. The other big problem is that there is a lot of regionality which is kicking in, right? So you have a lot of, say for example, because of now democratization of content and and it being available on digital, right? There's a lot of that which is happening. Now again, the element of influence changes in that case, right? The other very, very large issue is that there is a massive amount of money which is being poured in, right? Because of a liquidity event, right? A lot of startups went down to raise capital. But, so for some who are capitalized, of course, it was, very different kind of an approach that they took, right? For the other ones who are, say, bootstrapped, growing organically, even the traditional ones, right? Which are larger listed entities. I think it's been a complex sort of a condition and an equation, right? To me, when I talk to these founders, there is this definitive need to have tools which help them do better, which help them deliver better, right? And I think my biggest fear has largely been, this possibility of fads flying faster. And that essentially means that you'll have to very quickly understand the change in consumer behavior. And that's not possible without the right kind of tools, right? And I think that's what MiQ is here to solve, right? I'd love to understand how have you been looking at it, right? And the kind of suit that you have available, Siddharth, how are you helping some of the businesses cut through this extremely complex timing and engagement, right? Because the consumer expectation is going through the roof, right? You cannot go wrong on that. Everybody is fighting for that one small inch of space, right? It becomes important to have the right tools, right? And resource optimization also becomes important in a competitive environment. What's your sense? I'd love to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think this is where market is maturing, right? But at the same time, there is, market is getting diverse, I would say.
Right.
It is getting fragmented, it is getting diverse,
Right.
which is a good thing, as well as a bit of complexity is also increasing.
Correct.
So again, if I just give a bit of if I just take a step back basically, and I say that, so internet has grown, right, where, Google, Facebook, if you look at from a marketing budget perspective, they play a dominant role in India.
Right.
Right, which is well known. And Amazon obviously is also growing, and Amazon could be the third big player in the advertising space in India as well. So what is happening is that digital has been used for performance, as I was saying earlier as well.
Right.
When you do digital, you expect something to happen, right? Which is basically either leads to come in or sales to come in, and things like that. Now what is happening is your traditional branding mediums like TV, now they are also converting into digital, right? And also marketers and brands are realizing that I can use digital both for performance and branding. So in this context, obviously what we do, and that is something which is filling the gap in the market, is that you have big platforms which are able to consolidate your various channels, right? So you have display apps, mobile networks, you have now different devices also, like laptops, computers, mobiles, and then TV getting added, digital out of home getting added. So there are what is this called is DSP technology, which is basically able to consolidate all these various channels in one place. Now these DSP technologies are also there with various big platforms as well. So the well-known DSPs in India market are, for example, Google's DSP or Amazon's DSP or DSP by Trade Desk and so on. Now, what we do as a MiQ is we basically understand that brands and marketers are looking at various platforms, and they are saying now, how do I use these various platforms and try to consolidate my channels? And some of the fundamental questions also they are asking that, who is my consumer? Where is my consumer? What does my consumer want to hear about my brand, and how do I best reach through these various platforms and channels to my consumer? So what we have done is we have developed a very good data lake where we have a good amount of data about Indian consumers, adding various signals, which includes demographic signals or offline brand affinity signals, offline behavior signals as well, contextual signals also. And this is all GDPR compliant, so it's completely privacy compliant. It's anonymous data, but it is also mixed and matched in the right way, so that you are able to have a lot more signals for a particular consumer. Right. And from that perspective, you have richness of data from a cohorts perspective. So we are able to help brands answer these questions. So if you give the example of D2C as an industry. So for example, for D2C industry, what they are talking about is, okay, I've opened my website. Now I want to attract consumers, and I want to also understand who are the consumers I'm attracting. And out of these various consumers, what are the broad segments I have, and which are the segments which are really very important for me, right? And then where are they? Which channels are they? Are they consuming TV? Are they consuming smart TV? Are they consuming traditional TV? Are they, how much time they're spending on internet? What channels of internet they are spending time on? And what is the platform I should be using? So all these questions we are able to answer, and then with the help of our integrated data analytics and technology, right, we are able to provide an integrated media execution also for the brands. And our business model also includes partnering with agencies in the ecosystem, and we becoming their complementary partner on data analytics and DSP technologies, so that we are able to basically solve the last mile problem also for brands and agencies in a very good way. So that's
very interesting.
Really come into place.
Very interesting. So I'd love to understand the impact that has happened, right, from this, because to me, like I said, right, I've had this experience of talking to a lot of founders. This is a very consistent challenge, right? For the players that you've integrated with, I'd love to understand, right, what's the kind of impact that has happened, right? Because, essentially what you're kind of talking about is a connected marketing, play, right? What you're talking about is continuity across all mediums, right? And that's just so much more important, right? And that is only possible when you have an understanding of where the consumer is, what kind of a consumer it is, what demographic is playing on what platform, right? And I think then you kind of optimize it without losing the essence of your ability to communicate, right? I think it's just so much more important, right? But I'd love to understand the impacts of that. How is the impact been, and how fast and efficient has this been? I'd love to understand that.
Sure. So maybe what I can do is I can use an example. So we have a very interesting case study with L'Oreal, right? So L'Oreal, we had done a campaign, and of course they have been our client for a long time now.
Sure.
So the way it had started was that during lockdown, during COVID times, they wanted to reach out to their consumers, right? And they also wanted to, obviously during lockdowns there were some periods where you could, for essential services, etc. You could also go out of your home and everything.
Right.
So basically, they wanted to figure out that these are the cities and these are the areas where our salons are there, right? Who offer services and who also offer products related to L'Oreal Professional, right? Sure. So what we did was we did hyperlocal targeting, right? And this is the first question we helped them answer, that where are your consumers? And this is the right areas where you should be targeting them, right? Sure. And then from a targeting perspective also, we use some very interesting signals which are very relevant for the brand. So we targeted consumers who are using apps like Nykaa or Purple, so the beauty apps, beauty and hair care apps. So those devices where these apps are being used, right? That was one signal. Another signal, for example, was devices who are frequently entering the salons. Right. Then the third, fourth, fifth signals were those who are in market for beauty and hair care products, those who are interested in browsing about these products, and so on and so forth. Right. So with that, we were able to target geographically also, and as also from the behavioral perspective, the right audiences. Of course, we don't know who is we don't know the name of the person, we don't know the age of the person, we don't know the person, right? But we, as a cohort, we are able to
identify the behavior.
Correct. So as a cohort, we are able to target the right person exactly who are interested in these products and services.
Very interesting.
And then we also have a very interesting creative technology where what we are able to do is we are able to repurpose your best performing social posts and social creatives on LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, etc. So in this case, for example, Insta is obviously a very, very popular platform. So you can use that post on programmatic, basically. And then we also were able to, get these consumers to chat with L'Oreal in their WhatsApp business account, where they can so they consumers can ask that this is what I am. There were also a lot of issues on health problems, and you're in the house and you want some beauty tips, so you want some care tips, etc. So people were able to engage and they ask questions that this is what I am facing, can I do something about it? They were able to given the right information. They were also being given the coupon code for buying the right product or coupon code for availing of the right services, etc. Right. So engagement was obviously very good. Business which was driven out of that was also very good. And not only that, we also did a brand survey. So we also tried to understand the impact on the brand metrics apart from the revenue which was getting generated because of that. And we were able to see that there was a whopping 62% increase in the consideration, because in an innovative way, L'Oreal was able to reach out to their consumers and right at their home, it was able to provide them the right advice and right products and services. It facilitated the entire journey in a stressful period, and it was a very, very good success.
Interesting. So that's a phenomenal example that you kind of shared with us, right? Now, so that one particular challenge that I think which is now being discussed in the markets, right, is that at least as a market which is largely operated as a touch and clean market, right, which is us. There's a sense of trust that comes in, right? I think pandemic, I think the fear has kind of gone away. In a way, we've accepted it, we've lived with it, and I think going forward, will largely be hybrid in many ways, right? While there are organizations that continue to say that they're gonna be working from home, and there's a large percentage of the workforce which will be working from home. I think us as people are wanting to go back into a touch and feel environment, right? Events have started to happen, malls have opened up, we're consuming movies and so forth, right? Now, in an event like this, right? What's your sense of it? Is connected marketing going to amplify all of what a brand wants to do? Or can there be, a dichotomy in terms of, the ability to implement a similar, experience or the line of communication that you want to sort of put out, right? What's your sense of it? Do you think, and we've continued to debate this, right, across the board, offline versus online, right? Now, while I understand, especially in the last 2.5 years, online and everything online, and the ability to understand and comprehend digital behavior has just become so much more important. As offline takes over, what's your sense of it, right? Do you sense that for all the hard work and all the good work that you've been doing and all the advocacy that you've been doing, do you think it's going to become a challenging environment in that sense, and there could be a delay in adoption, which is very, very big constant, right? When you, especially in a third environment, what's your sense of it? How do you see it?
That's a great question, Ashu. So I would say, I think offline is the place where we all live, right? So we need to integrate that, right? Digital is a important channel, but digital is a channel, right? At the end of the day, we live our life in both the digital and offline worlds. And I would say, still majority of commerce in India happens offline only, right? So that's where, again, better connected marketing, when we say, we want to basically also include the offline signals, right? And then provide these answers to the brand, because, it will be not wise if we just take the digital signal and give the answers to the brand, because then that will be incomplete answer. Right. So, for example, in the L'Oreal case study also, one of the big signals was we need to target those consumers who are, frequently walking into salons, right? And, you can browse and you can browse a lot of stuff, but when you actually go into a specific place, that means, you are actually taking the effort to, your behavior really shows that you are really interested in it, and you are not just browsing for the sake of browsing. So from that perspective, offline is a very, very important aspect. I will give you another example of how we do better connected marketing, and how we try to live by what we believe in, basically, is that, so, we have a very interesting case study with Jaguar Land Rover, right? It's not an India case study. It's a different market case study. But what we have done there is that basically they wanted to drive footfalls in their dealerships, right? So we basically, first of all, understood the profile of the consumer, and there again, a big signal was consumers who are in the market right now going into the dealerships of various cars, and those who are comparable to Jaguar Land Rover as well. And then the second was that we also looked at signals like, there are, hundreds of dealerships across the country, right? Which are the dealerships where sales is good, right? So we can reduce the marketing there, right? Because the sales is good. The other signal we took was, where is the inventory? If the sales is good and there is sufficient inventory, we still need to do some marketing, because we can give that air cover to the sales.
Right.
If the sales is bad, inventory is high, obviously marketing has to be much more intensified, because we are in a bad shape here. If the inventory is not there in certain dealerships, why do we want to do any marketing, right? So that's how we are able to connect sales data, we are able to connect inventory data, and we are able to connect consumer data, and provide the right intensity of the marketing to provide a lot of efficiencies in various geographical areas.
Very interesting. That's a good highlight, Siddharth. And I think more importantly, with all of this, right? And I think we talked about online, offline, right? And I think this perspective that you gave of Jaguar Land Rover, right? I think what's also important is, I think not so much in this case, but I think when you're talking about, say, some of the other faster moving industries, right? If you're talking about, white good as an industry, if you're talking about FMCG, right? You're talking about some of these faster moving goods and commodities. I think there's a layer of personalization that can be built in the process, right? And I think that personalization is very, very important. But I think brands today are looking at it in a big way, right? And I think digital is going to help, offline navigate better. That's my sense of it, right? Depending on how you kind of implement it. And I think that's possibly also what you highlighting in the process. Now, Siddharth, there's a very big sort of a problem which is emerging, right? And the world is kind of talking about it, right? And that's essentially on privacy. That's on a cookieless world, right? And that essentially means that it's going to get so much more difficult for brands overall in general to steer. Right? I think you'll pretty much be starting everything from scratch in your relationship, right? Every instance is going to be a new instance in many ways, right? What's your sense of it? How do you see it? It seems like an opportunity for especially players like MiQ, right, who are leading this entire play together, who are bringing that sensibility and that intelligence for brands to do better and well with their clients and customers. What's in it for brands, right? My fear is that a lot of this possibly could become very expensive in the process. What's your sense of it? Is that a right fear or a fear uncalled for? But what's your sense of the overall cookieless ecosystem that we're talking about? And of course, a little bit of fear, like I said, could be a subset of the answer that you give me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Ashu. So it's definitely a disruption, right? It's a disruption for a good cause, which is protecting the privacy of the consumer. But at the same time, definitely the way cookie has been one of the main identifier, and it is being used for last 20 years or more. To do marketing, that is getting disrupted. That's a very, very big fundamental disruption which is happening for sure.
Right.
But we definitely support it because, as we know, it is for a good cause, which is basically privacy of the consumer, right? And what we are talking about here is future proofing, right? So anybody who owns their own cookie space has to adapt now, right? And some of the ways in which they can adapt is basically to focus on the channels which are not based on cookies. So it could be your digital out of home, mobile, connected TV, audio. These channels are becoming bigger and they don't rely on cookies. And they are also more privacy compliant as well, I would say, because for example, digital out of home or connected TV, you don't exactly, there's not one person owning that device, basically. Right? So from that perspective, it is even more difficult to pinpoint a particular consumer, which is good from a privacy perspective. And it is also not dependent on cookie any which ways. Right? And then, of course, you want to also have the right creative strategy and messaging, right? So that then you are able to basically, basis that you are able to gather data. Okay, am I engaging with the right consumer, and then tweak your targeting in the right way accordingly. And also for all the brands, it is very, very advisable to focus on the first party data, right? Because it is the third party cookie data which is going away, not the first party data. So if you are for example, a D2C brand, the reason why you are actually, a lot of FMCG brands are moving into D2C is because they want to directly connect to the consumer, build their own consumer first party data. And that is the right thing to do, right? That is where they need to go into, and then of course they can also partner with people who have data expertise and further enrich their data, further enhance their understanding of the consumer, and then of course provide more personalized experience for their consumers.
Interesting. Please go ahead, Siddharth.
No, and the last point was that so there's also what we call the clean room technology, which is basically you can access log level user data in a privacy first environment. So I wanted to highlight it because again you're building your first party data. You can use these clean rooms to further enrich your data, and then from there again basically do a good job of personalization and having very relevant communication to your consumers.
But Siddharth, tell me this, right? So is this a correct fear, right? And a question that I'd asked you, right? For the bigger boys, it's all understood, right? They have the means and ways and the muscle to sort of pull this off, right? For the newer guys, right? And I think what we've seen really last 2.5 years has been emergence of the newer entrepreneur, right, or a newer business owner, whose journey essentially started as somebody who was facing the same problem, right? Now, in an environment like this, their ability to reach to the customer is going to become so much more difficult, right? It's going to become so much more expensive in many ways. Is that a fair understanding? Is that a fair risk that we run as in that this might just become a big boys game, right? And the smaller guys will just get washed out in the process, right? They'll have to figure out different ways to engaging with the customer, right? And possibly get to a point where they have a sizable base to get to a point where they can afford technologies like programmatic applications and tools.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair question, Ashu, and I would say that big guys need the small guys as well, right? To thrive in the ecosystem. Right. Like an Amazon is Amazon because there are so many sellers on Amazon's platform. Sure. It's as simple as that. So I would say there are a lot of tools in the programmatic space itself where you don't need to go to the high end of the programmatic. You can use the basic tools. For example, Amazon's tools for sellers, who are so many thousands of sellers. They are all obviously small players relatively. They are very important. Meaning, I'm not saying that from any perspective that they are small, so they are not important. In fact, they are very, very important, and that's why there are a lot of tools, for example, which are being given to them where they can use these tools in a programmatic way and then grow their business. And it is being given because the big guy depends on them. It's as simple as that.
Right. Interesting. And that's a different challenge altogether, right? But I'm going to save that for our next conversation, Siddharth. Siddharth, now, I think one thing is understood, right? The larger guys in the game, larger organizations, larger players, HULs in the world, Unilevers, Maricos, the larger players in the world understand the need for consistency in communication, right? The younger guys understand the need for consistency in communication, right? There is a very thick layer in India, which is that of SMEs and SMEs, right? Now, I think, I think no conversation today can be complete, without talking about SMEs and SMEs, right? Especially when you're doing a B2B conversation. Now, this is a segment which is, very iffy, right? They've been very tentative about, the adoption of digital. There are businesses that are built out of, very older world practices, still transitioning. And it's a challenging environment, right? But we're seeing some shift that is happening there. Right. What's been your experience from an adoption standpoint within the SMEs and SMEs? Because, I've had the chance of speaking with a lot of these guys, a lot of export houses, a lot of electronic companies, right, who built their own brands or who partnered brands are now become B2C first, right? In many ways, they have a strategy which is for online. Are they effective, not effective? I think it's a different question altogether. But what's your sense of it? Are you seeing adoption coming from that segment as well? Because they have the required capital, they have great products. I think the lack is in the intent and honestly to the extent understanding of smarter tools for a connected market. What's been your experience on that front?
Sure. So my experience has been that I think for majority of the small and medium enterprises, I would say they now understand that digital is an important channel, right? And for example, again, I would go back to the marketplace as an example, right? So there are so many now these smaller enterprises who are leveraging these marketplaces to publish themselves online, and then from there figure out from there how can I expand as well, right? And I think this is all about embracing the change, right? And there are some players who are able to do it well, because you I would say it's probably a bit of a cliche, but instead of fear, you need to lean into the channel and you need to learn and then quickly adopt. And what I'm seeing definitely from my perspective is that there's a lot more adoption happening, and especially during COVID time, right? Especially during pandemic, when a lot of small and medium enterprises realize that the only way right now I can go to my consumer is through digital. A big shift has happened.
Interesting. Siddharth, towards the end of our conversation, how I honestly don't want these conversations to end, right? And there's just so much of perspective, right? And especially, I think you're in a vantage point, right? In many ways, you're seeing that shift on the consumer side, and I think you're bridging that gap. Helping organizations do better, perform better, in an environment which has become so much more dynamic, right? Siddharth, what are the next 2.5 years like? What are the milestones that you've set for yourself, the targets that you've set for yourself for India and for larger Asia? I'd love to understand that.
Right. Yeah. So actually, that's a great question, Ashu. So we have a program for startups, right? which is called Upright. So there, what we are doing is we are creating a very strong ecosystem for startups and small and medium enterprises to basically unleash the full power of programmatic, right? And that is where what we are doing is we are basically bundling things like, helping these startups and the small and medium enterprises to answer fundamental questions like, who is my consumer, where are they, and what is the best way I can reach out to them, and how can I measure the success of my programmatic efforts, my digital efforts, basically. And the reason why why I'm talking about this as an answer to your question is because that is where we really want to focus in the next 2.5 years. Because as again, coming back from the previous question as well, what we are seeing is that because of pandemic, there is a huge awareness about digital as a channel. And these startups and small and medium enterprises, they have basically exhausted their initial digital channels, and now they are eager to get into bigger or other channels of digital. And that's where programmatic comes into play, where you're basically using search, you're using social, and now you are expanding into programmatic, where you're doing display, you're doing video, you're doing connected TV, you're doing digital out of home, and you're adding you're adding channels progressively as you expand. And that's where this bundle of analytics and programmatic services together makes it easier for startups and small and medium enterprises to consume this, to digest this in a very good way. And that's what we're focusing on. And I would just add one more point that in the next 2.5 years, the biggest revolution we will see is in the connected TV space. Right. And that's where, again, I would say that for startups and small and medium enterprises also, TV will become more accessible, which I think cannot be a much bigger or better news, because if earlier, if you needed to have a minimum budget to get on TV, but no longer the case now.
Very interesting. Siddharth, when you talk about startups, right? Just a quick question. I think it becomes important to get that highlight, right? What stage of startups are you looking at? Are you looking at seed, beyond seed? Are you looking at pre-series A? Are you looking at funded startup? What is this program? Which startups are this program for?
Right. So I would say this is for all the startups, right? But if there's a startup which is basically into like pre-series, right, then we would want to help them arrive at the right initial marketing strategy. Right. But someone who is at a series B, series C, series D level, whatever, right, then we have a different set of offerings where we are able to basically tell them that, okay, now this is your maturity level, and these are the next steps which you need to be taking in your digital journey. So depending on the stage of the startup, we have different bundled solutions, and then from there we are able to advise them in the right way. It is also not so much about commercial opportunity, I would say. It is also about it is also about educating or helping the startups in the right way to get their initial steps right. Of course, it is very interesting for us because that way we are able to have early inroads and early relationships with the future unicorns.
More strategic. Very interesting. Right, Siddharth, last question in this conversation. There are a lot of people on the fence, right? There are a lot of disbelievers, and I'm sure you deal and your team deals with that day in, day out. Right. If any message that you want to give it out to a lot of these promoters, right? That, like I said, right, who should be using this, as a parting comment, what would that be? I would love to end this conversation at that advisory note of sorts, right? Would love to hear.
Right. No, I would say, your skepticism is right. There are so many channels on digital, so you're right being skeptic. But I would say that, keep testing out different channels and, look at the data which you're getting, right? And I would also say that, have your expectations and your data to be collected over a period of 3 to 6 months, basically. That will help you to understand all the channels in the right way. And then of course data will speak, right? Once you have sufficient amount of 3 months to 6 months data will speak. Basis that you take further actions, you adopt the right channels for yourself. So you don't have to believe anything, but you have to collect sufficient amount of data and then take database decisions.
Very interesting. So completely concur with what you're saying. I think a lot of occasions as business owners, right, we in a way anticipate an outcome, right? And that essentially means that, there is a preconceived notion that we've built in our minds. We tend to overlook some very small nuances that, data could give out, right? And that could essentially mean that the pattern of engagement, the strategy of engagement would just be so much more different, right? From how you do your content, how you distribute yourselves, which region, for example, is doing much better for you, right? And I think that neutrality is very important. Having a partner like MiQ, I think, helps you bring in that sort of a neutral environment or neutral understanding, right? And which could mean that the longevity of the business and the impact that you want to create with that business just could be so much more different in many ways. Siddharth, this was an absolutely spectacular discussion. Like I said, I don't want these conversations to end, right? There's just so much when you're talking about a complex market like India and larger Asia. Of course, Asia becomes a little more homogeneous in many ways, right? But I think India is extremely complex. I don't think you want to end these conversations as quickly. But I think this is an absolutely spectacular conversation. There are of course points that we've registered. We would love to cover them through the course of our next interactions. But like I said, it was an absolutely spectacular conversation. Thank you so much for doing this one, and look forward to having you with us. That's enough.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ashu. Very interesting questions. Really appreciate giving us the opportunity.
Thank you, Siddharth.